This week on Two-Faced Wrestling Talk.
Jon Moxley makes an impact in AEW and one in New Japan, one in the ring, and one without even appearing. We will discuss. Also in AEW, Darby Allin continues to win new fans with a great match against Chris Jericho. In NXT, Keith Lee and Dijakovic have their rubber match without getting a winner. At King of Pro Wrestling, Suzuki and Liger finally have their showdown, but the result had Kelsi asking, "That's it?" ROH had its Glory by Honor show in New Orleans, where a local tag team delivered an impressive performance, and we now know the new number one contender. And speaking of ROH, their former tag team champs are now champions in WWE. Plus, in SuperKicking It Old School, in honor of Halloween, we look back at the WCW pay-per-view known as Halloween Havoc. That is next.
Two-Faced Wrestling Talk, the podcast that goes beyond WWE and goes in depth on NJPW, AEW, ROH, PWG, and more. Also featuring fun pop culture and wrestling crossovers, listener Q&As, and extended discussions about wrestling topics past, present, and future. Now, here's your host, Kelsi.
Hi, and welcome to Two-Faced Wrestling Talk. I'm joined, as usual, by my co-host, Paul.
Well, the old expression, Kelsi, better late than never. We both had really busy weeks, and then we had to travel to Chicago early Friday. Thought we would get the show done Friday afternoon, but we were enjoying being tourists in Chicago a little bit. Plus, we went to the Northwestern Ohio State football game Friday night, so a rare Saturday morning.
But then the bad news, our Yeti microphone's not working either as of right now. So we had to do a secondary setup. That took some time. So lots of crazy things happening this week that postponed the podcast. But we thank you guys for your patience. And we're still bringing you the content, although it's a little late. But better late than never.
And if you're watching us on YouTube and you're wondering why you can't see us, because we had to scramble to do a secondary setup, this is an audio-only version. So you'll still hear us, but you'll just see a lot of the logo.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys, but thanks for checking it out nonetheless. And then a few plugs before we move on into the crazy week of content, because we've got a lot to cover this week. You guys know I hate plugs, but if you really love our podcast and you want to support us, and you could really help us out if you joined our Patreon, plus get really cool rewards at the same time. So not only are you helping us, but you're getting bonuses too at the same time. Go to patreon.com/superkickingit. There's lots of great levels, and each level has its own bonuses.
And of course, we say even if you can't help us out financially, you can help us out in a big way by rating us wherever you're listening to us on iTunes, Google Play, etc.
Especially iTunes, it's really important because that helps us in the podcast rankings. And leaving a review helps other listeners and viewers want to check us out as well. So please consider doing that if you especially can't join Patreon.
And we also encourage you to support our great supporters at Wrestling Travel.
WrestlingTravel.org. They've got wonderful travel packages to all kinds of awesome wrestling events, including Wrestle Kingdom. Get on that. There's only a few left. Time is ticking down, but it should be an amazing trip. They also have WWE event travel packages, like to the Royal Rumble, of course, to WrestleMania. And there should be a lot of fun extra bonuses for the WrestleMania travel packages. Check that out. Again, go to WrestlingTravel.org or check out their Twitter. Also, fun to note, Wrestling Travel is sponsoring an upcoming GCW show. That's some big news. Congratulations to Wrestling Travel and to GCW for that partnership. That should be really interesting going forward and really cool.
We also have bonus audio and throwback episodes that you've been releasing throughout the Halloween season.
Yes, I just released one on Tuesday. It was, which wrestlers would you like to be in your version of the Monster Squad? And even if you guys have been listening to us for a long time, I mean, heck, I'm the one who recorded the podcast and edited it, so I spent the most amount of time with the audio, and I didn't remember the majority of answers, even my own answers. So when I went back and listened, I was like, this deserves to be put out there again. So if you guys haven't heard it or seen it, please check it out. It's up on all of our audio platforms, and it's up on YouTube. It's the last episode that's up before this episode drops.
And we want to remind you to stay tuned for the second block, where we continue the Halloween thought by remembering Halloween Havoc. We give you our thoughts on the best stage setup. And, I thought that was going to be a more fun ranking system, but some of the stages were pretty basic.
There were just webs on one of them and trees. in the early years.
Yeah.
It got a little better going forward, but there was
But then at the end, they went like on the
2 years in a row, they had the same thing, and then they had like nothing.
On the last stage, yeah, it was like
they gave up at that point.
Kind of like WWE did for a little while with the generic stages. That's kind of what they did with that.
Well, you got to remember, that's like the year 2000. Like, it's going downhill by that point, WCW, obviously.
And we were going to discuss in the second block one of the events that was kind of part of the WCW downfall, a Halloween Havoc, where they had a disastrous ending.
Yeah, we'll talk about that because, I mean, that was still a decent year for them, but yeah, that wasn't a good ending for the pay-per-view in terms of pleasing people. We'll talk about that later. We're not even going to tell you what match it's about, but you may know.
You probably do. But now it's time to give our opinions on the latest wrestling shows, news, and developments. It's time for headlines. And we're going to start with New Japan's King of Pro Wrestling show, which the show itself was in doubt because of the typhoon that hit in Japan, and we weren't sure who was going to wrestle, if anybody was going to wrestle. And they started the show by saying that Zack Sabre Jr. and Jon Moxley weren't going to make it because of travel things, but now you wonder if the Jon Moxley thing was just an excuse because he was also stripped of his U.S. title.
Lots of people are talking about how that was purposeful, and AEW didn't want Moxley looking weak because he would obviously drop the belt to Juice.
Right.
If he were to be the one facing Juice, because...
Well, not to mention insane travel, wrestling Monday morning in Japan, and then having to come and be in the AEW show, which was in Philadelphia. A lot of travel.
Lots of travel. And, you know, a lot of people think Juice is a B-plus player, so that's why they're coming up with that idea. Oh, they didn't want him losing to Juice, so they were like, he can't come, just strip him of the title. Whatevs.
That could be.
I like Juice.
And we'll get to that Juice match, and we'll talk about his replacement and who ended up winning the U.S. title. But we got to start with Suzuki and Liger. The final, probably not the final showdown, but finally we get a showdown after months of build-up and, releases of Jushin's Thunder Liger's alter ego and all of that. And so Liger comes out, and the first thing he does is spits in Suzuki's face.
Yeah, it was a cool start, but at the same time, I felt like there could have been more aggression throughout the entire match. And we'll get to... the end in a second, and I know you'll say more highlights from the match, but you said final showdown, but then you countered and said it might not be the final. Well, I've got two takes on that. The ending couldn't have been better in terms of respect being paid by both. I can't see a topper better than that. But if it's not the final, there surely could be a better match overall.
Right.
So there's two ways to look at it. I mean, I could see this being the final because of the way they had both men react to each other at the end, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But what I see is weird about if it is the final match is that the match itself could have been, more aggressive, more hardcore, because they were calling it a blood feud.
Right.
So I'm like,
and there was no blood.
Is a blood feud? Like, it just... Suzuki, I've seen him have other hardcore, intense matches. I mean, even against Okada. It should have been on that level or higher. There was some chop exchanges and stuff, just still not the level of a normal Suzuki match to me. I just thought this was going to be to a whole nother level because of the story behind it.
Well, I mean, to me, the best part of the match was when Suzuki was daring Liger to keep hitting him, and the selling by Liger of he was wearing himself out trying to beat down Suzuki and couldn't do it kind of thing.
I like that too.
But overall, yeah, it seemed like a pretty quick match. It seemed like there could have just been more to it. I mean, Suzuki ends up hitting the Gotch pile driver. And then, like you mentioned, they pay respect to each other, which was a very cool moment.
So let's talk about that. So Suzuki, he's about to attack Liger after he already wins. Then he, decides otherwise and actually bows all the way down to the ring mat.
Yeah.
And that was crazy. Then he rolls out the ring and leaves. Then Liger's left in the ring. He gets up, and then a few minutes later he says on the mic, "Thank you, Suzuki." Pretty intense. I really like how they both did that. Really cool ending, but I just think the meat of the match could have been longer.
Yeah, I mean, with that exchange of respect, it certainly seems like this was the final showdown.
Yeah.
And if it was, I'm disappointed in it. Especially if you're going to have Suzuki win and then Liger's probably going to win at Wrestle Kingdom, I'm guessing, but maybe not. Who knows? But I don't know. I just thought there could have been more to this.
With the end, it made it good. But without the end, what would we have thought of this match?
Right.
I would have been thoroughly disappointed. There was cool points, don't get me wrong. I'm not totally destroying the match. There was a lot of great moments. But it's just, I've seen a lot of Suzuki matches. And I wouldn't put this in, my top favorites.
No.
I mean, the ending kind of gives it a little more oomph and makes it more likable to me. But overall, in terms of match quality, it is not one of my favorite Suzuki matches.
So we'll see what happens going forward with both of them. And of course, last week we talked about the rumors of Suzuki leaving New Japan. So who knows?
There was, 3 matches after that? 4 matches. So
5.
To me, already, there's an example of the problem. Yeah, I know you got your title matches and stuff, but it's like you could have foregone that with the story that they were trying to tell with Suzuki and Liger. I'm not saying it had to be the main event, but it could have been higher up there on the card. And this is like Suzuki has been facing this problem all year.
Yeah.
Every show he's been in, it's been like a lower tier match, a lower card match. But the quality has been good. It's just they haven't placed him high on the card.
And he's so loved, and he's such a favorite. You just wonder if there's something going on backstage. Who knows if he's difficult backstage and they're punishing him? Who knows? I don't know. I don't understand any of it, to be honest.
I don't see that. I just think it's a booking decision, and I feel like if I was Suzuki, I'd be unhappy with that too, because this should have deserved a bigger spot on the card.
Yeah.
4 matches after that?
5. I just counted. There were 5 matches after.
That's insane
including
to me.
a 6-man tag match. Yeah.
That was after?
Yes.
I don't even remember that. I mean, I remember the match.
Yeah, it was the Goto and Jay
before.
White and setting up Ishii and Kenta and all that.
Yeah, so why was that after?
Yeah, exactly.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So there you go, guys. No wonder Suzuki's unhappy if those rumors are true.
Absolutely. After that was Ospreay and El Phantasmo, and I feel like they're going to the well too often with these two getting together, but at the same time,
match was amazing.
The match was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who cares if they're going the well too much?
I know they could go as many times as they want. I mean, when Ospreay launched ELP into Gino Gambino ringside and the chaos that ensued there, and Gambino, where's my ice pack? And
that was one of my favorite lines of the whole match. But it was really great.
I mean, that made it seem like legitimate chaos, because Gambino gets hit pretty well. It's because of the backstory with him and Ospreay. And then, then they keep fighting all the way to the top of the entryway where you were doing a lot of screaming and being scared.
I was? I don't remember that.
When they were fighting on the top of the entryway.
Oh, yeah, I did scream. I was like, get off of there. Get out of there. What are you doing? Be careful.
You were legitimately worried that somebody was going to fall off there.
Because it was a slanted surface. It wasn't a flat surface. And, there was a point, I know they're selling as well at the same time. There's a point their feet are slipping towards, the edge. And then when, they both kind of get off of it. I mean, it just, who was it that jumped off? ELP? The jump didn't seem that great. It's like, man, the payoff wasn't there. They were fighting up there. I was stressed and tense, thinking, oh, they're going to get hurt. Oh, God, oh, no. What are they going to do? They're going to do something crazy. Then he just, the way he fell and jumped was a little kind of
anticlimactic.
Yeah, it was a little bit disappointing, but it is what it is. It was still a really cool moment in terms of the visual was cool.
Yeah, for sure. Later in the match, Ishimori got involved. You thought ELP was going to win by some chicanery. Ospreay ended up kicking out of Styles Clash before hitting a powerbomb off the top rope, and then the Hidden Blade and Stormbreaker. I kind of thought ELP was going to win this match because they have squared off so many times, but they keep Ospreay champ.
On commentary, they had said that ELP had been the biggest thorn in Ospreay's side. So to me, it made sense that he beat ELP.
Yeah.
He had to conquer that, that hurdle, essentially. And it's funny, you talk about, are they going to the well too much? We'll talk later when we talk NXT about Dijakovic and Lee and how much they faced off, not only in NXT, but they faced in PWG and other companies as well. But, I still get excited to see them wrestle all the time. But yeah, there is a worry there, they're facing off one-on-one too many times. But I thought that it didn't show at all in the quality of this ELP versus Ospreay match. So to me, you could think that, but the match delivered, and really, isn't that all that's important?
That is all that's important for sure. Not much to mention about the 6-man tag other than they're clearly setting up an Ishii-Kenta showdown. I did love a couple lines from Jay White, though. He says to Goto that he is not the one, talking about the next challenger. And then he goes over to Tanahashi and says, I'm the greatest. And Tanahashi just kind of smiles and points to himself, and he goes, I am.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty funny. Juice gets his U.S. Championship match, as we mentioned earlier, but it's not against Jon Moxley. It's against a guy who has had a great year in Lance Archer.
What a topper to his great year. Well-deserved, in my opinion, because, spoiler, he won the match. And now he's the new U.S. champ, and I just am so excited to see that. Yes, I always praise Juice. I'm not bashing Juice by saying I'm excited that Archer won it instead. I just think that Archer's had such a hot year in terms of redefining himself, kind of going solo, without his KES partner. Just it's awesome to see him win, and his match quality just gets better and better. He's such a great big guy, and I think he's a good face right now to be the U.S. champ. Something different than the previous champs that they've had.
It was a great match too, no DQ, and Archer did some great stuff. He really kind of brutalized Juice. He choke slammed him through a table,
and we really think he dislocated his finger.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really by the hand of Archer, but still it happened during the match, and this is, if it's real, it's not the first hand injury that Juice has had. It seemed real because I saw it happen, and he was really kind of shaking his hand. It almost looked like he popped his finger back. Yeah,
because Archer had put him through some chairs that were stuck in the ropes, and everybody was focused initially on Juice's nose because it got busted open, but you could see him favoring his hand, and I thought initially that he dislocated it, and then the announcers kind of made an allusion to that, so maybe he did and popped it back into place, which, kudos to him to keep going, but, we've heard of guys doing that before. I think of Finn Balor popping his shoulder back into place.
That was great. Yeah, that was crazy. But, Juice is clearly not a B-plus player. Keep going during a match. Just keep going and going, and he delivered a great match here.
Yeah.
It was brutal. It was awesome. Lots of chairs. I mean, insane amount of chairs.
Well, yeah, Archer hit the blackout on a bunch of chairs, but Juice kicked out before Archer would hit the EBD, and then he starts beating the hell out of Juice, and then we got the return of David Finlay.
I really liked that, too, and they had a big hug, Juice and Finlay. I think that was a great use of Finlay's return.
I agree.
Because, him and Juice were really catching on fire. And this gives Juice a direction after not winning this title. Hanging out with Finlay, again, they'll probably have some great content coming up. Who knows, maybe they'll be an official team.
Could be. That's a good thought process.
But Finlay might want to, have a solo run because he was doing pretty well before he got injured. But we'll see.
Well, and we'll have to see if Juice gets another title opportunity down the road. We'll see what happens with him singles-wise now, too.
Yeah.
Not much to talk about in Ibushi versus Evil, or
we
really
knew the result.
Or Okada Sonata. They were both decent matches, but yeah, we didn't really feel like Sonata or Evil was going to take the spot of the other.
Good match,
in Wrestle Kingdom.
Good match, but I wish the contender was somebody where you were really questioning. Oh man, especially because the briefcase or contract in the briefcase has always been successfully defended. You want it to be upset, and you want to tease that it could happen,
right.
That it's a possibility that not everyone's just going to completely successfully defend. You don't want that to be every year how you feel about the briefcase being defended, because then why defend it?
Yeah,
before Wrestle Kingdom?
Look, I think it would have to be somebody that really is a surprise to win the suitcase, right?
Yeah.
Like a surprise winner of G1, but then that diminishes G1 too. So I don't know what you do with that. But yeah, if you had a surprise winner of G1 and then somebody came and upset him,
yeah,
like a lesser person won the G1, but then, like I said, that diminishes the G1.
No, I think I would go the opposite direction. Still have a prominent person who had a great performance win the G1, obviously. Let's use Ibushi as an example since they did win. So you could still have Ibushi win, but have his people that he's defending the briefcase against be really high up. High up on the card.
I would say like a Suzuki, but Suzuki's not really high up on the card
No, but
now.
he should be. But I would question, because you've got to have somebody that Ibushi is facing that you could see main eventing Wrestle Kingdom. I could never see right now, this year, the way Evil's performed, him being the one to main event Wrestle Kingdom against Okada. You got to have someone who's believable for them to main event. That's all you need. The point is to have that aura that you can go on and main event Wrestle Kingdom. That way, you're really questioning, Ibushi's great. and that would be a great main event. But man, look at this person they're making him defend against. They could easily main event with Okada. That would draw big.
Yeah.
That's what you got to have, that type of match.
Yep, I agree with you. I agree.
I mean, the match was good, like you said, but we just knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, I just did. I mean, I guess you could say there was an outside chance Sonata would beat Okada, and somehow Okada beats him down the road again to get his shot back or something. I don't know, but there was no chance Evil was beating Ibushi.
Yeah, I know. There's no way. So that's how I felt too. And the same thing with the Okada match. Like, they're building up to Wrestle Kingdom. There's no way Okada was going to lose there. So it is what it is, but good New Japan show overall.
Let's switch to AEW. I know we've started with AEW the last couple of weeks. We bumped it to the second slot this week, but it's still got to be towards the top of the show because the ratings have been great, and I thought this was, of their 3 shows, the best of the shows yet.
That's what I was going to say, exactly what I was going to say. Of the 3 shows, it's funny, you would think that their first premiere episode would be the best one, but I feel like they're getting better each week, and that's awesome. And I didn't mention this last week. We were talking about some criticisms because last week I was so favorable for the episode that they ran. And I did love it. I like this one even better this week. But last week I didn't mention that there's a lot of wrestlers still that we haven't seen. Now we have seen some of them this week. And that includes, Marco Stunt, Jungle Boy, people who the audience as a whole has not been introduced to on TNT. And I think they did well. I think it was a good showing. But again, I want more of why should we care about these people for the audience watching at home. And I'll use our coworker, Gus. He works with us at CST. I asked him, hey, you've been checking out AEW? He's traditionally a WWE guy.
Big time.
Yeah, and used to go on his radio show and talk WWE, try to talk other promotions, and he would kind of steer back to WWE. Yeah. So I asked him, because I knew he was planning on watching, so you've been checking out AEW? He said, yeah, just got to get used to a lot of these guys. I don't know who they are, and I'm kind of confused, so just trying to keep things straight. But, Jericho, man, he's great. So, yeah, that's why Jericho's champ, to bring in people like Gus.
Right.
And that makes sense. But, again, Gus is still a little confused on some of these other people. Not that he's not liking them, but he's got to keep these people straight.
Yeah, like Gus wasn't even interested when we talk really even NXT. He was just a WWE TV guy, and there are people that are like that, and so but they are checking out AEW, which is good for the product of AEW. But you're right, they've got to expose more of these guys, and we'll talk about in a minute a guy that's getting some exposure because he faced Jericho and Cody and is really starting to impress people in Darby Allin. We'll talk about him in a minute.
He's the way to do what they need to do with everybody else.
Well, yeah, but not everybody can wrestle Jericho every week to get the exposure either.
Well, that's true.
So you gotta start organically, getting people more mainstream.
Video packages like they did with Cody about more people. That was probably the best part of the show, was that video package, and it's nothing new if you've been watching, Road 2 shows on their YouTube channel. It's very similar to what NWA did building up the Cody Aldis match before All In.
Right.
If you checked out Cody's YouTube channel then, same types of video packages, or you could just call them video episodes because it aired by itself as a standalone on YouTube to promote the match. That was really successful then, and it did what it needed to do. Same thing when they ran the Cody package in the show. Did what it needed to do, was powerful, placed meaning in his search for the championship.
Well, and look, not everybody watched Road 2 stuff and 10 Pounds of Gold and all that. So, like, a friend of ours who lives here in Illinois, which, by the way, we didn't even say we're doing the show from Illinois, I don't think, did we?
We did.
Oh, okay.
We said we were in Chicago.
We did say we were in Chicago, and I guess that's true. But he lives down in Champaign, and he even said that the Cody video package was the best thing he's seen in wrestling in a long time. So, again, for somebody like him, who he is familiar with AEW, but still
he doesn't like anything, and it was crazy surprising to see him like that video package.
He certainly wasn't watching behind the scenes videos. So the point is, you've got to do more of these kind of video things.
That's what I'm saying.
But not necessarily with Cody, although it's great with Cody.
Cody's already got the exposure.
But you're going to have to do it. Yeah. Even with a Joey Janela, there's a
Jimmy
lot.
Havoc.
Yeah. You did the one with Jimmy Havoc last week.
That was too short. Let's have a longer one looking at his whole career.
Yeah.
Why should you care about this guy? You got Allin, against him. Janela, you just mentioned, against him. No one's caring about Havoc right now unless you already know him. You can't do that. You've got to have these casuals, these new people care about him too.
I agree.
And the way to do that, do a Cody package, but for somebody else.
The show started with the Lucha Brothers attacking SCU. Pentagon ended up putting Daniels on a package pile driver on the ramp. And so Scorpio stepped in. And again, this is another example, again, using our friend Iddings, who didn't even really know Scorpio Sky. And it was like, this guy's incredible. That's the kind of thing that, yes, there's the AEW core people, but, more people have got to see people like Scorpio Sky, who is fantastic.
He's fantastic in the ring, and he's fantastic on the mic. So, yeah, again, highlight him. They did have the first week, they had that video package in front of the White House. That was really cool for SCU.
Where he did the Obama impersonation?
Yes.
That was great.
So I think they have gotten some exposure before having that match. So, you just got to keep doing that with everybody. Scorpio Sky is a great example. I think he's going to be organically over. He's just got great talent.
SCU beat Best Friends to advance.
But see, that's the thing. Best Friends. Like, why are these guys hugging? What's the story behind this?
Yeah.
Who are these guys? It's weird.
Do a video
package. Not to me, but to other people watching at home. They didn't set that up at all. SCU has got a little bit of an intro, and they kind of tried to do something with Best Friends with Jen Sturger or whatever her name is, but it went terribly wrong.
Yeah.
It was barely anything at all. I think they need to do a better job with interviews as well. It just flabbergasts me that there's so many women who want to have jobs in wrestling, yet they give the job to somebody who doesn't know wrestling at all. And I'll get heat for it. It's fine. I was there at NWA 70 where she didn't even know Dory Funk Jr.'s name. And she was like, we're here with a legend whose name cannot be ignored. And he is, looks down at her paper. That's unacceptable when you're working on TNT. That cannot happen. You got to put over the talent at all costs. So to me, it's flabbergasting. There's many women who would kill to have a job in wrestling, interviewing people who actually know wrestling and are passionate about it. So that's my take on that, and it's a hot take. That's fine. You want to come at me at SuperKicking It.
Lucha Brothers also advanced, beating Jurassic Express, as you mentioned, Stunt and Jungle Boy getting an appearance and getting a chance to show what they did. But, of course, Lucha Brothers, who are probably, in my opinion, the greatest tag team in the world right now, get the victory. We also finally saw the appearance in ring of Santana and Ortiz.
They're one of the best tag teams in the world.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about later the Briscoes. Man, I really want to see a Briscoes Lucha Brothers match.
Oh my God, that would be fantastic.
But it can't happen right
now. There's no way that can happen.
It can't happen right now.
AEW really, by the way, focused on tag team wrestling this week because even one of their co-main events was Moxley and Pac versus Omega and Page.
That was a great match. That was one of the best matches on the card. I mean, of course, the main event was amazing too. We'll get to that in a second, but that was a great match. Well, surprisingly so.
Moxley went for the barbed wire stuff, and Pac went to take it away, and Pac cut his finger pretty good on the barbed wire.
I mean, you didn't see it right away. You saw a little blood, but that near the end, you saw it really bleeding. And I think it was cool that, Moxley is just out for himself.
Yeah.
You'd think that Pac would be more like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting, both kind of playing heels, really a lot more so Pac lately. But Pac was the one who was, interested in getting the win and was really mad at Moxley, just leaving him.
Yeah, well, Moxley hit a Death Rider on him and just took off.
Yeah, I know.
See ya.
I just think it's cool that Pac's cares so much about winning that he'll even push aside heel tactics and he didn't want to be disqualified. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
He wanted to win the match, and that's how much winning means to Pac. It's great storytelling, great character development there, and that builds on top of Pac on commentary last week.
Right.
So they're doing a great job with Pac, and he hasn't even been on TV very long. So very good.
In the end, Omega hits a V trigger on Pac, and then that went into Page's dead eye, and that was the end of that.
Page getting a big pin there.
Yeah.
That was needed.
And he got to do some of his cool stuff in ring.
Yes.
So good exposure for him.
Great exposure for him because he had been getting some big losses.
Mm-hmm.
So this was big for him, I feel like. I know it's just a tag match, but like you said, that's one of AEW's strengths. That's nothing to snuff at, these tag matches, even though they're not they're not official tag teams, they're makeshift tag teams. It doesn't matter. That's one of AEW's strengths.
Absolutely.
And that's why this match shined. They know how to do tag wrestling.
They do.
And I think that's really a big strength of the whole company.
Main event was Jericho versus Allin, and as I said in the beginning of the show, Darby Allin. Even, again, I know we're bringing up our buddy Iddings a lot. Even Iddings is coming around on Darby Allin. When he saw him against Cody, he's like, this guy's scrawny. I'm not buying it. He sends me a text this week. I'm starting to be impressed with this Darby Allin. And how could you not be? He was so awesome in that match.
Wow, Idding's coming around. That's surprising.
But
whatever, he's such a poser. But hate. Then all of a sudden, I like it now.
But the skill and coordination and whatever else you want to say, fearlessness of Darby Allin, having his hands tied behind his back and doing the stuff he was doing was unbelievable.
He does incredible things, and that's why he's organically over. They didn't give Havoc those types of spots.
No.
In his matches.
No.
So I know I keep going to this Havoc well, where I keep talking about how Havoc is not featured and not prominently over. It's just not as organic for him. Allin has like this striking visual appeal with the way he looks. He's so small, but he still goes all out and goes crazy. I just think Allen's got the leg up, especially with his Cody match that he had, before they started TV. Mm-hmm. That really set him on a great path.
Because nobody really knew his story or any of that.
And they did video packages before that.
And we went and researched things because we didn't really know that much about him either.
Yeah, so if you look online, you'll see even more about him. And the video packages they've been doing on him, like online, have been really intriguing. But this match was just like the cherry on top of the Allin cake, because he just keeps getting better and better and rising up on the card. He really went toe-to-toe with Jericho, and you thought for a second, wow, he could really win. I mean, we know he couldn't win.
No, I don't think I thought that, but...
I mean, I didn't really think that. What I'm saying is the match was so good, it wasn't like Jericho was doing a squash match.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Remember what I said during that match, too. As AEW goes along, they're going to have a secondary belt of some kind. And with guys like Darby Allin and Joey Janela and Jimmy Havoc, it's got to be some sort of extreme championship, I think, because that would be something for AEW that would be fantastic.
That would be fantastic, especially because, one of WWE's titles, the 24/7 title, is more like a joke.
It is a joke.
So do a secondary title in AEW that's a serious thing and a really hardcore thing.
Yeah.
You super separate yourself from the type of content WWE puts out. Because we also discussed this week, and we'll talk more about it during NXT, but it's like, yeah, NXT and AEW are the more wrestling-based companies, and they are the ones on the same night. So technically everyone's calling it the Wednesday Night Wars. But it's like AEW's pulling so far ahead.
Right.
In terms of content and in terms of just popularity. Mm-hmm. It's like really, it's hard not to compare it to Raw and SmackDown in terms of scope with audience and stuff.
Look, and there's no doubt to me, AEW was far superior to Raw or SmackDown, and it wasn't even close.
I mean, and I think it was far superior to NXT, too.
Well, yeah.
Because there was matches I could fast forward again, and you can't have that when you're having a, quote, war. I mean, you can like both, and I do like both. I enjoyed NXT too, but it's like if you're one of these people who are like, which one was better? Well, I gotta say AEW was better than all other shows on TV this week.
I mean, if you're going through it on TV, it's AEW, NXT, SmackDown, then Raw, I guess. I don't know.
It's hard with SmackDown and Raw. They were both pretty bad.
Yeah.
Storyline-wise, and wrestling hardly ever gets a chance to shine on those episodes.
Yeah, very few, although there were a couple highlights that we'll get to in WWE in a little bit.
Some storylines have been interesting, like we'll talk about Bayley later, but otherwise it's few and far between. But that Allin stuff, good Al. I'll have to censor my own words. But
since you're going to say that, I am looking back at my notes, and I specifically wrote Darby Allin's hands taped behind his back, and he's still doing crazy shit.
Yeah, he really did do some crazy stuff, like flipping in the ring and crap. Oh, man, that was awesome. Really enjoyed it.
Well,
and then, of course, they had, like, the cool ending. So, before we move on, they had an ending that wasn't like a brawl, but it was Jericho and his buds, the Inner Circle, celebrating with a little bit of the bubbly. That was really a nice touch, I think. So it was an ending that wasn't a brawl, but it still worked. It was still a powerful ending. AEW is still ending strong. So, very well done. Even the end of the match. Great stuff.
Yeah, which, by the way, we didn't even say a part of the Inner Circle got involved in that match with Jake Hager. Hitting
distracting
Allin.
and everything and interfering. So it even leaves Allin even stronger. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like it was a complete clean match.
No.
So there you go.
Yeah. So I mean,
it did everything it was supposed to do.
In his biggest matches, there was a double count out, right? Or time limit
draw.
Draw, and then this. So they're really giving Darby Allin a chance to shine.
I mean, he's built up pretty heavily right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got to do something with him, and I think the crowd really loves him. They're super behind him, it seems like. Just do that with the rest of your roster, AEW. Keep building the others, because there's a lot of people who just haven't been exposed yet. So keep building, keep building. We didn't even mention, like Britt Baker, I think, needs some work, too, in terms of her getting her over with the crowd. She was built as the cornerstone of the division. She was the first woman signed. Riho is getting over, though, because of the story they're telling with her matches. But, do more with Britt, because I have a feeling Britt might be a future champion for them.
Well, and I said during the match, Britt Baker shouldn't have lost clean on that.
Yeah.
Priestley should have been involved or something.
Why didn't they do that? That was odd. But again, there's really no reason besides she's a dentist to get behind Britt. I mean, not to me, but I'm saying they're not presenting more. Talk more about her, who she is, why she wants to win. Then weave her dentist stuff into that. So more video packages will help with all of that. So we'll see going forward how much they do.
I agree. Speaking of video packages, we talked about the one on Cody on NXT. I thought the Gargano video package also was really good, just talking about his passion for wrestling and showing some of the young stuff of him growing up and stuff with his father and stuff. I thought that was really good.
That was good. Another, quote, package was when they had the footage shot by Undisputed Era on their phones.
Yes.
I'm not really calling it a package. It was like a roll-in.
Yeah.
But I thought that was some great promo stuff. And then they showed that they beat up Velveteen Dream. Mm-hmm. That was really cool. And they said, hey, Finn Balor, hey, Ciampa, if you get in our way, this is what'll happen to you too. Really well done there, and really painting the picture of how Adam Cole's got his watches back around every corner. There's two guys gunning for him right now. So I really thought that painted a really cool picture.
Yeah, and they're moving towards a pay-per-view, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do going forward with Cole, with Ciampa getting his in-ring return this week. And then we had the Lee Dijakovic match, which, again, good match, really good match, but it's still not that PWG match, and hopefully maybe that's what we're going to get at a show down the road. Now, because of Undisputed Era's interference, now next week we've got a triple threat.
Probably with Roderick Strong and the two guys.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's just... Has PWG spoiled us on Lee and Dijak?
Yeah.
Or Dijakovic, whatever.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, because it's hard. You can't measure up to that match. It was so good. I really loved that match. But again, I'm seeing there's going to be a takeover match down the road. There has to be.
Yeah.
I mean,
with some sort of stipulation.
Yeah, like a no DQ match or something. Last man standing, you mentioned when we were talking about this earlier off camera. I just feel like they got to do something with these guys that's longer. I know they can go. And I know the company sees something in the future of that. That's why they didn't have a decision in this match. And that's why the next match is a triple threat. I thought it was odd that they were putting their rubber match on TV. Although, they want to draw on TV, I understand. But again, I was just surprised that it wasn't a takeover that was the rubber match. And now I think eventually it will be.
Well, and speaking of shorter matches, I thought when Dunn and Priest were going to go at the end of the show, I thought they were going to change that match because there was only like 12 minutes left in the show when the intros were hitting, and I'm like, really? They're just going to give these two like 12 minutes, but they went past, which they've been doing a little bit on NXT on USA.
They have been. They've been going over their time, which I don't know if that's okay or not, but obviously it must be. Let's talk about Priest a little bit. He got to do some of his cool moves. You love how he uses one foot to go over the second rope and flip onto the outside.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
Awesome. Especially for a dude his height and size.
So yeah, that was cool. The character, though, I hate.
I know
Let's look at his previous incarnation of himself in ROH. Punishment Martinez. Didn't like the name. He could have just been Punishment, as you said many times. Didn't need the Martinez part because it was just really clunky. But the persona was awesome. Didn't smile, was all business. But in NXT as Damian Priest, the name elicits a dark character. Similar to what Punishment Martinez was.
Right.
Dark, foreboding, never smiles, but yet they got this arrow thing with the flames. Hate it.
See, I don't mind that.
I hate it. It's so cheesy and corny. It just ruins it all for me. Why is a monster doing this, shooting a fake bow and arrow thing? Totally kills it for me. But on top of that, I hate the whole, he's partying, he's going to raves.
That part is...
models. That doesn't fit the character. What are they doing?
No, the bow and arrow thing is fine with me. The headbanging thing with the lights when he comes in. Those two, I think, are fine. But yeah, the party boy thing just...
That's why he's doing the headbanging. I hate it. Make him stoic. He was scary. I interviewed him back when he was in ROH, and he didn't smile at all. Make him like that. Make him serious as hell. He's a super threat. He's foreboding. I mean, I guess they think that's too much like... Who's that guy we'd never see anymore who disappeared? That big guy.
Lars Sullivan?
Yeah.
Well, he's hurt, but yeah.
Well, he, even when he was on the main roster, we didn't see him for a while before he got hurt.
Right.
There was all this, rumors of drama of him not showing up and stuff. So they didn't have him on TV after that. Then he got hurt. But again, that's how Lars Sullivan kind of was foreboding. So I guess you don't want to have too many guys who just don't talk and don't smile. But Punishment, I think, pulled it off even better than him. Sullivan.
Yeah, some guys can have character without saying a word.
And I feel like that's...
And he's not really saying much.
Damian Priest.
Yeah.
So why not utilize that instead of making him a party boy, but still a sulky party boy? It doesn't make sense. But anyway, that's my rant on that.
I did love at the beginning, Pete Dunne is confronted by Killian Dane, and he just kind of nonchalantly breaks his finger and just keeps walking to the ring. I thought that was fantastic.
That's pretty funny.
But Damian Priest did get the win in a match that, again, these are two phenomenal talents.
That was a big win.
That could have been longer too. So
yeah.
I mean, not everything can be a 25-minute match. I'm not saying that, but
it's funny how we're saying that the NXT matches could be longer, but we haven't talked about the lengths of AEW matches. I feel like I don't pay attention to the lengths because there's so much to like. That's a funny observation, and I didn't think about it till just now, but the length of the AEW matches hasn't been jumping out to me as a weak point.
They pretty much set everything at 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Which I guess if you know the confines of the 20 minutes, I think maybe that, I don't know, maybe if you just know the match is just going to be 20 minutes, then I don't know. Then maybe I'm not thinking about...
I haven't been thinking about their lengths. Maybe if there's
actually a time limit announced, maybe I wouldn't think, okay, that match could have been longer, because if there's a time limit, it couldn't be longer because it was 20 minutes.
It's just I feel like time is nothing I'm thinking about when I'm watching AEW. It's weird because none of the matches just felt too short to me. They all just felt like they had enough. Whereas in NXT, I felt like there could have been more on some things. Like maybe it's because of the PWG thing with Lee and Dijakovic, because that was definitely longer. But maybe it's because of that we're concentrating on the length of time so heavily, but I don't know. But actually, to bring a devil's advocate view, when they said that they were going to have a 20-minute limit in AEW and that they were going to concentrate on longer matches, that was something they talked about off camera. I think it was Sean Ross Sapp said that, not every match has to be long.
Right.
There can be some squash matches. Or maybe it was Ryan Satin. I can't remember who I saw. It was one of the two of them, but not saying that they're interchangeable. I just can't remember who said it. I'm sorry, guys. But one of them said squash matches exist for a reason.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with those.
And that there can be short matches, or like sometimes there's just a powerful match that's really quick and that it can stand on its own. So they were saying that was a criticism of AEW's focus. I don't know. I mean, I could see it that way. Not every match has to be 20 minutes or close to, but still, I like the longer matches personally.
Look, that's a whole other thing. I think the way AEW segments the show, where you get those 20-minute matches, you don't really have commercial breaks in the middle of the matches. You have a couple squeeze backs, which I'm not a fan of, but I get.
Yeah.
Now, the way AEW segments the show, I think is great.
I think it's great, too. I never think about the time. It's weird.
No, it goes quickly and is very entertaining, which is something you can't always say about WWE, which is where we go next. The War Raiders, War Machine, Viking Experience,
I don't even know
Viking
anymore.
Raiders, whatever you want to call them. They get their first title on the main roster, getting the win over Ziggler and Rude, even though they almost botched the Viking Experience at the end, kind of throwing Ziggler, and they kind of had to catch him. But they win the titles, which is great because they're starting to really get over with the crowd, finally, which is a good thing. We know how great they are.
They are amazing. They deserve the
We
titles.
know that we were on opposite sides in England, where I was rooting for the War Machine against the Young Bucks.
Yeah, in Newcastle, that was fun.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, and then you were going, War Machine, I was going, Young Bucks. But I really love both, so I'm really happy for whatever the hell they're called now, Viking Raiders. You couldn't even get their name right.
No, I wanted to
on our notes.
No, I specifically wanted to say all their names.
Yeah, you accidentally wrote down War Raiders.
Yeah,
then crossed it out or something.
Yep, I did. I put War before Raiders.
That's pretty funny.
I did think it was interesting that after they won the belts, they had an interview, and they said, we've been champions all over the world, and they mentioned New Japan.
But the bigger surprise, they mentioned ROH.
Yeah, they specifically said Ring of Honor, NXT, and Raw. So interesting, because we always joke about that. Sometimes WWE acts like nothing else exists. Nobody had a career before they came to WWE. So I like just the acknowledgement of that.
Well, with so many New Japan talents, the New Japan thing isn't as surprising because they've been kind of shouting out Japan for a while. I mean, if you even look at Finn Balor's career, they've said that on the main roster. But what's more surprising is Ring of Honor. And you've got your Ring of Honor haters, which will say they're mentioning it because they don't feel it's a threat anymore. They are not scared. They don't care about mentioning it. That's fine. You can think that. But ROH had a good show this week, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we're coming up on that shortly. Quick other thoughts on WWE. Seth Rollins burns down the Firefly Funhouse. So what does that mean going forward? And
I don't
there's
know.
speculation on why they did it.
And there's also speculation on, like, okay, they addressed, I think Bray Wyatt said on his Twitter, like, how'd you get in?
Yeah.
Like, it's supposed to be like a different world,
right.
You know? So it was kind of like, oh, man, so Bray Wyatt on Twitter is acknowledging that Seth Rollins did some kind of, like, universe jumping thing to get into the funhouse. It'd be funny if they brought that story into the TV story and talk about how, like, you know, Seth Rollins found some kind of inner power to go to the funhouse.
Right.
But, yeah, do you think that means that there's no more segments in the funhouse?
I don't know. I hope that's not the case.
That's been the best thing about the show.
Yeah.
The only good thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not only, but one of the highlights.
Quickly, some other talking points about WWE. What did you think of the draft? I was underwhelmed.
I was underwhelmed, and everyone was underwhelmed when you talk about the universal reaction to it. Also, apparently, online, they had a list of people who were going to be in the draft, and when they were drafting people, they went in the order of that list.
Of what they revealed, so there wasn't any surprises.
Ridiculous. People were like, this is absurd. Why are they doing this?
Yeah.
But yeah, underwhelming. Something cool that happened on WWE TV, Bayley turning complete heel, killing the Bayley buddies, kids crying on social media.
Yes.
Pretty cool.
A darker version of her theme song. She cut her hair. She killed the Bayley buddies.
She pulled a Felicity, but it worked instead of worked against her. When Felicity cut her hair, everyone hated it.
Oh, yeah.
It killed it.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
I know. I like Felicity. I like the show a lot. So, yeah, that was terrible. They should have never cut her hair. But it works for Bayley. Although I'm not really a fan of the bob, but I think it's great for her character. Darker, edgier. And I just, there's this one shot, someone posted a GIF of it, where she is, destroying the buddies and just standing there staring off into the crowd with a scowl. And then one of the buddies falls over her head. She doesn't try to, like, knock it off of her head. She just lets it fall over her head and fall down without moving, still staring forward.
Yeah.
She no-sold it, essentially. And that somehow made the character greater. Yeah. Someone tweeted that, so props to whoever did. I can't remember who tweeted it. Great tweet. Totally true. She looked really scary in that instance, so great stuff.
Yep. Finally, we know we're not big fans of the Saudi Arabia pay-per-views in the middle of the day. So I don't know how to feel. I know they want to make the show as big as possible, but having these big matches where you get Tyson Fury going against Braun Strowman and Velasquez going against Lesnar, I mean, these are great things for WWE. They're going to get universal appeal because of who the opponents are, but in the United States, it's buried in a 1:30 in the afternoon on a Thursday.
Yeah, and then you've got Ric Flair's team versus Hulk Hogan's team. You know, people are making
which they've had to rework that whole thing too, because some guys have dropped off of Hogan's team. So I don't know.
I don't know how to feel about it. I mean, I don't like the whole shows there anyway.
Well,
so
that's true.
I hate it.
That's true too. So, but I am interested more. The Lesnar Velasquez, I'm not as interested in as the Tyson Fury and Braun Strowman.
Really, I'm more interested in the Lesnar stuff.
Really?
There's a story behind that.
There is. But I don't know. Velasquez, just maybe just because he's got no personality. I don't know. Let's put it this way. I like the interaction so far between Fury and Strowman.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Which has been good.
I just think there's a backstory with the Lesnar stuff, and that's why I like
big
that.
time backstory.
That's why I think it's interesting, just the idea of it.
And that's why I think it's going to get some mainstream appeal as well.
Definitely. I guess it's smart in a way, but also dumb. Not really, but it's smart. I don't know.
Ring of Honor, the Glory by Honor show in New Orleans. We joked about it last week. It was in our backyard, yet neither of us could go to it. I was in Jacksonville with the Saints, and you were working. But I thought it a pretty decent show for kind of not a big show, especially putting on over the New Orleans talent. Jay Spade went against Shane Taylor.
With a funny reaction during the match by Caprice.
Of course, with the screaming. I love
the high-pitched, oh my God! That's so good. But yeah, we know these guys because, that's our local promotion back home. And we actually, before we get to Luke Hawx and PJ versus the Briscoes, we interviewed Luke Hawx not that long ago. 8 months ago? How long ago was that? A while ago, but it was a wonderful interview. And maybe we'll replay it for you guys one day because if you want to know more about Luke Hawx, including Perry, he talked about both himself and his son in that interview. And that was really good. And definitely enjoyed that match. But yeah, going back to the Spade thing, he was highlighted quite a bit. And commentary did a wonderful job of making these guys seem like real contenders. It didn't make it feel like a squash match.
Well, especially when you talk about Luke and PJ, now Perry.
Yeah.
They gave them a video package before the match.
And it was an awesome video package. We're killers! That's so Luke, just talking that way. I wish they would have said, because there was this line in the video package with Luke and PJ. Luke's like, this may be your house, referencing Ring of Honor, but it's on our territory.
Right.
You got to pay us rent.
Right.
Rent's due. Talking about being in NOLA, being in New Orleans.
Right.
They should have shown his tattoo. He's got a NOLA tattooed across his chest, and it's like really like hardcore looking. And I just think they could have it was all in black and white. They could have like zoomed in and had like a pan of his tattoo, been like, rent's due. You're in our house, our territory, kind of thing.
Well,
our house is on our territory.
They
That's
also,
what it
at the
was.
end of the piece, said, "You guys are bad, but we're worse," or something like that.
That was really cool.
But I thought it was really interesting because, there are squash matches, just as we discussed earlier, and you would think the local guys, as we've seen in WWE, NXT, whatever, even AEW, I think, has done it, where you have local guys who just, get squashed. But they get a chance to perform. And look, we've had guys from the Wildcat promotion that we've seen on Raw and SmackDown.
Yeah, and they would get squashed.
Pump Patrol, your guy.
Yeah.
But in this, the announcers were really selling the father and son, Luke and Perry, as a legitimate threat. And if they were to be on the main roster, they would be title contenders, which made me hope that maybe they are going to get a chance to be on the main roster more.
They need more tag team wrestlers. So, it would be cool if they got featured more. I don't see that really happening, though, because they had to put him over for that match. But, can you see Luke abandoning his school and his promotion?
School, his promotion, plus he's so heavily involved in Hollywood, and even he's gotten his son involved in.
Exactly. So it's like, I don't see him leaving all that he's established, and we're really talking from the ground up.
Yeah.
He's established it from nothing, worked really hard, and I think he's happy with where he is in terms of he controls everything. But this was a huge highlight for both of them in terms of there's more people watching Ring of Honor than the squash matches on 205 Live.
Right.
So I think at least.
Yeah, I agree.
I hope at least people are watching Ring of Honor more so than that, but I don't know.
Roosh beat Silas Young in a championship match, and then it came down to the number one contenders match. Two members of Villains Enterprises, Skrull versus PCO.
I said that they could meet up in the final.
Yeah.
I was like, it could happen, and that's what I want to happen, and that's what did happen. I like, you'll talk about the match, but what I liked was at the end, Skrull was teasing that he'd be unhappy about PCO, but then saying, I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
You deserve it. I'm, in the prime of my career. It's your time.
Well, it's funny because they are all in one stable, but Skrull, if you were just watching the match, you almost assume that PCO was getting kicked out of Villain Enterprises.
Yeah, because of Brody.
Well, because Skrull hits him with an umbrella before the match.
Right.
Then Sinclair gets knocked out, and Brody King comes into the ring. Then Sinclair gets knocked out a second time, which was crazy. And Flip Gordon gets involved, but PCO keeps coming and coming.
Yeah, and Brody tags. He's not human. Brody tags with PCO all the time.
Right.
So you would think when Brody came in that he'd be on PCO's side, but they even emphasized on the commentary, well, Marty's the leader.
Right.
Marty recruited Brody. So that's how they kind of explained Brody's choice to help Marty versus PCO. But I liked it. I thought that was kind of a nice little touch. And I'd like it even further if, let's say PCO doesn't win his title shot, and then he tries to go back tagging with Brody King, and then there's some tension there because of that. That'd be a cool story to go forward with, build stuff for the future.
Yeah, I agree. So, interesting stuff, but now PCO is your number one contender. Of course, the next person that gets a shot at Rouge is Jeff Cobb, and that'll happen in England in a couple weeks.
Also
on
in
their
England,
tour.
They hyped it on commentary, making his Ring of Honor debut, Speedball Mike Bailey. I'm very excited. If you guys don't know about him, he's incredible. He had an incredible match against Ospreay a while ago on, I think it was WCPW. Of course, now that promotion's gone.
Yes.
They had changed to Defiant Wrestling, but that's gone completely, and which is a shame. That's the match, or the promotion, I should say, that we were referencing when we talked about seeing the Young Bucks versus the War Raiders in Newcastle, England.
Yeah.
It was, at the time, WCPW, and as I just said, it had changed to Defiant. Now it's dead.
Yeah.
But anyway, somebody who's great, who's wrestled all over England, because he can't wrestle in the United States anymore. And he did wrestle in PWG way back in the day. Speedball Mike Bailey. Look out for him, guys. Watch Ring of Honor in England. You will be happy with Speedball. I'm telling you. You
Yes,
will like
you will.
him. I've got a shirt because he's that good.
And you'll be happy about what we talk about in the second segment. When we come back, we look back at Halloween Havoc. As we super kick it old school, we look back at the old stages and rank them, and we review a classic match from that pay-per-view. That's next.
Two-Face Wrestling Talk is proud to be sponsored by Wrestling Travel. Check them out on Twitter at Wrestling Travel. Also go to their website, wrestlingtravel.org, to find out about all the exciting travel packages. They also have a very fun Wrestle Kingdom travel package, which includes round-trip airfare, 5-night hotel near the Tokyo Dome, lower bowl tickets to both days of Wrestle Kingdom, and guided tours by Being the Elite's fat-ass Masa. Come on, who wouldn't want to hang out with Masa? I think that's like the coolest thing they offer. You get to have some time with him, meet him, interact with him. He'll literally be hanging with you. And you'd get to be a part of the first 2-day Wrestle Kingdom, which is going to be really special in my opinion. They also have travel packages to WWE events, including WrestleMania 36, which you can sign up for information at wrestlingtravel.org. And they've got packages to the Royal Rumble as well, plus other events too. Check out their website. There are USA travel packages, but also UK travel packages. So whether you live in the UK or where we live in the United States, you can find something for you. Also, don't forget they've got a friendly staff that can help you out. DM them on Twitter or contact them through their website.
Thanks, Wrestling Travel.
Our Two-Faced Wrestling Talk logo was inspired by Two-Face, the Batman animated series character, and his coin. The logo was designed by the talented and creative artist Eric Hudson. Eric creates wrestling-themed pieces as well as other pop culture art. He is also currently working on a Roddy Piper comic book. You can follow him on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dreaded Dinosaur. You can also support his work by becoming a patron at patreon.com/dreadeddinosaur. Please check out his work.
And now back to Two-Face Wrestling Talk.
Before we get into our Super Kicking It Old School with talking about WCW, Halloween Havoc, and stuff, let's first do some quick plugs. If you guys like us, check out our merch. We've got some cool merch at superkickingit.deco-apparel.com. Again, that's www.superkickingit.deco-apparel.com. Check it out. There's at least 3 different designs up on there and multiple different types of shirts. You've got a long sleeve, a short sleeve, a women's shirt. Also, we've got a mug and a pillow. Check it all out there. And it would be great if you could support us. It would help us out a lot. Might have to buy a new mic. We don't know. So check out our Patreon as well. That's patreon.com/superkickingit. You could support us there and get bonuses or check out our merch store, as I just said.
But now it's time to Super Kick It Old School. And we will start by talking about Halloween Havoc, the stages themselves. This is a show that went from 1989 to 2000. And so we quickly looked at all the stages just to see if they did some cool things. And they did do some cool things. And then other years they did some minimal things.
They slacked on some years. But I do in the future, because we saw little bits of it, I want to rank the opens,
Yeah.
the open video packages maybe next year, because there were some really awesome cheesy ones. Like there was one where Sting, and it was like superimposed with like a full moon.
Yeah.
God, it was awesome.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want to see these cheesy opens in full.
There was one in 91 where they kind of dissolved in like they were ghosts.
Yeah. So I want to see more of those, and maybe we'll rank those next year. But the stages, some are really cool. Like I was saying earlier in the show, one was just like some netting behind them when they were doing interviews. Another was just it looked like drawn trees, like, black tree trunks and stuff.
Well,
very small.
1990, the stage and the interview area were the same thing, and they just basically threw a bale of hay with a pumpkin on top of it and a skeleton just kind of laying on the ground. It was so like,
basic.
We need to make it look like Halloween. Anybody got a skeleton? All right, just throw it on there.
Well, the thing is, like, there seemed to be a similar theme throughout all of the years of the set, and it was tombstones.
Yes.
Obviously, that has a lot to do with wrestling. The name's called Tombstone, and, people beating other people. So, like, they're squashing them, they're killing them, whatever, metaphorically. So I think the tombstone theme kind of rang throughout all of the Halloween Havocs, and it was appropriate. It really goes with wrestling quite well.
Well, and from 94 to 99, they had basically the same stage setup with a graveyard and a mausoleum,
right?
And they would intermittently add things in there. So that's how we'll kind of rank things. At number 3, we've got 1991, which had that cheesy open that we were talking about with the ghosts.
Yeah.
That had tombstones and a haunted house with a full moon.
I liked that one a lot. It was a little more than previous years. It was almost like the first one that really had something that wasn't just thrown on the set like the other years.
Number 2 is 1993, where they had the wheel.
A hangman's noose, really high up, glowing pumpkin, cheesy looking snakes. You said they were kind of
two
poorly
snakes
done.
On the ground were ridiculous looking.
I still liked them.
And then number 1 is 1998 and 99. Again, similar stage setup with a graveyard and mausoleum. But
giant pumpkin that said WCW, and then a big gargoyle above it holding it.
Yes. So those are your stage setups. There are multiple matches we can certainly talk about, but the match we wanted to talk about on this one, and next year we'll talk about a different one probably, but Page versus Goldberg, 1999. This was a good match, but it was also known for what happened at the end of the show and what happened the next night.
It was a disaster. A good match, probably Goldberg's best match at the time. It was definitely one of his longest matches with DDP. And really, it was just really well done. DDP really made him look good, I think. But it was all overshadowed by what happened at the end. The show got cut off with like 5 minutes left to go.
Yeah. And it was only like a 13-minute match to start with. So.
I think it was like 16 minutes or something. But it was like a disaster because they had to cut it off. And so the next night they showed it for free, and people were furious.
Well, and I will take you back because I do remember this. I was watching, of course, during that time, and I did not watch the pay-per-view because I would have been one of the irate people, of course.
Yes,
but
of course.
I did. I had planned to watch WCW. As I told you, I either watched WWF or /WWE or WCW by whatever was more appealing. And that night, I was watching WCW, and they apologized, I think, for what had happened the night before, but told everybody at the end of the show, we're going to show you the match in its entirety. And
people were mad.
Yeah, people were mad that they had paid money and everybody got to see the main event for free, basically.
Yeah.
But it really was a good match. They started out really intense, where they started brawling, and they both went through the top rope and the second rope down to crashing to the floor. So I thought it was a good way to start the match.
And you were so surprised that later in the match, Goldberg was using an arm bar. You couldn't remember him ever doing that.
Yeah.
So you were like, oh, he did that? I was like, yeah. I've seen this match once before, like 5 years ago, when I was just randomly watching old matches. So I remember a few things about it before we rewatched it.
DDP was actually referred to as the People's Champ at that time, which was kind of interesting.
That is interesting,
well,
because there's another People's Champ, obviously.
But
even more interesting, just how much charisma DDP. I mean, we know that now. I mean, he still has a lot of charisma with his yoga and stuff, and whenever he makes appearances. But his charisma, just thinking about how much older he was than everybody and all of his passion. If you listen to any of his interviews, his Hall of Fame speech, just you can tell the passion he had and has for the business. Going through wrestling training at such an older age, but still succeeding against the top people in the business, like against Goldberg at the time, who was one of the hottest guys in the company. And Page really gave him a good match. Somebody who wrestled a lot later and older than everybody else. Yeah, but he still paid his dues.
You felt like DDP, obviously we knew the result, but you felt like as you watched it that DDP could have a chance to win because Goldberg hits his shoulder into the ring post, and he ends up favoring that throughout the rest of the match. And then
he reversed the jackhammer into a diamond cutter.
Yep.
That was pretty badass.
Yep. But eventually Goldberg does hit the jackhammer, and at that point stayed undefeated. But it really was, as you mentioned, one of Goldberg's best matches. Because, look, Goldberg, we were talking about longer matches. Goldberg is not a long match person.
Well, that's the thing. And
that's why his match against Lesnar at the WrestleMania in Orlando was one of his best matches because they packed a ton in, and that's what they did in this one.
I agree. I just think it was one of his best showings at a time where he was so dominant. You actually questioned he would win, and that's why if you think about it in the scope of what was happening at the time, it makes it even better than just watching it as a random match. You got to know kind of the story behind it. If someone today used to today's wrestling would have just seen it, they might not have liked it. You got to know what goes behind it because there's a lot of story there in terms of DDP actually seeming like he had a chance being like a crowd favorite, but Goldberg was also so over too.
Yeah, big time.
And then the streak was a big thing. So all of it together made this a really great match at the time. I like it, and I still enjoy watching it. But then again, I know what goes on behind it.
But I did really enjoy watching that match again because it really was an entertaining match. And so we hope you liked a little super kicking it old school. And of course, next week we will have another Halloween themed segment. It'll be a Poppin' Wrestling, I think, fun little segment.
Whose your idea?
Yeah. Whose house would you want to go to? Whose would you not want to go to? Whose would have the best candy?
In terms of trick-or-treating?
Yes, trick-or-treating.
So which wrestler's house?
Not just on a generic Tuesday in January.
No, on Halloween. Like, who would have the best decorated house in terms of wrestler? Which wrestler would have the best decorated house? Which would have the worst decorated house? Why? Explain your answers. And which wrestler would give out the best candy? I also want to add in which would give out the worst candy and why.
Yeah.
I have an answer right now, but I don't want to spoil it. But like, there's an obvious answer of who would give out the worst candy right away. But can't wait to see what you guys say. Tweet at us. We're gonna put out that question on my Twitter and on our Twitter at SuperKicking It, SuperKickingIt. Also our Twitter, Two-Faced Pod, TWO FACEDPOD. Look out this week. There'll be lots of polls about candy, that specific question we just revealed, and a lot more Halloween themed stuff all week long. Of course, wrestling stuff too.
But before we go, it's time for your tweet of the week.
Oh, yes, my tweet of the week. And I got to say, we talked about having such an insane week, and it was nuts. Because we're in Chicago, I had to prep at work to leave, and it was just brutal. So hence why we're doing the podcast a day late. But also, I didn't get to look at a lot of tweets this week on Twitter. So my tweet's kind of like 9 days old, actually. And it's not even from a wrestler, but it's praising a wrestler. And this tweet you actually made me aware of. I had no idea it existed. But D. Snyder, at D. Snyder, said, finally, another voice in the community speaking out. Chris Jericho. He says Metallica needs to play the Super Bowl. And he quote tweeted an interview in an article with Chris Jericho talking about Metallica needing to play.
But he also mentioned Slipknot, which would never happen.
He even said Slipknot wouldn't happen. He said more so Metallica.
And I don't think, look, as over as Metallica is, the halftime is not for fans of Metallica. It's for fans of Taylor Swift.
That sucks.
So to me, if there's ever going to be a rock band that plays halftime, it's going to be the Foo Fighters because Dave Grohl has so much appeal. He performs at the Grammys with all these different artists.
I wouldn't be as excited to see the Foo Fighters as I was Metallica.
But Metallica would be awesome.
It would be so epic.
We just saw the S&M 2.
That's why I'm mentioning it, because we had just seen S&M 2. Then you mentioned to me the Super Bowl thing, and I was like, man, S&M 2, like, I can't wait for the album. Like, they're going to come out with an album to go with the movie.
If you don't know what S&M 2 is, there was an S&M 1, which is, Metallica performing with a symphony orchestra. Well, they did it a few weeks ago at the brand new Chase Center in San Francisco. It was opening the arena, and they did this incredible performance with the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, and it was fantastic. And they've been showing it on movie screens the last 2 Wednesdays, and there's been such appeal for it. They just added another showing.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know this.
Wednesday, October 30th, you still can see the movie. S&M
cool.
too. So
guys, check it out if
yeah,
it's in your area. Check your movie
Metallica.
listing. It was so I was blown away. Like Paul's way more hardcore of a fan than me, but I really didn't get into them until Paul took me to see them in, what was that, St. Louis?
Yep.
In St. Louis, and with his friend Iddings that he was mentioning earlier, who didn't like Darby Allin. Now all of a sudden he does. Whatever, Iddings, change your flip-flop. You're a flip-flopper. That's fine.
And his
we
wife,
had a great,
Tara.
yeah, and Tara.
Shout her out. She went too.
She saw this crazy Metallica dancing man and got me footage of him. It's this crazy fan who was like dancing insanely. Tara got that good footage of him. It was a really fun time, but after that concert, I really liked them a lot, and so I got into them a lot more after that. I didn't really know much about them beforehand, but afterwards I was like, heck yeah, I wish we could go to a Metallica concert now when I actually know more of their songs. But seeing that movie was like we were at a concert. So props to Dee Snider for praising Chris Jericho for calling that out. And, I agree, but as you said, it's very unlikely that they'll ever play the halftime show.
I hope I'm wrong, but I know I'm not.
Everyone knows how big of a music fan Chris Jericho is, so that's nothing new, him being vocal about music and praising other musicians. He is a musician himself as well as a music fan, so kind of cool. Wrestling related, but music related too. And I hardly ever talk music, so there you go. It's a crazy tweet of the week.
And more next week. Also next week, we'll, of course, be talking AEW versus NXT, as we mentioned, our Pop and Wrestling segment. Before we go, we want to thank our Patreons, Jason Spann, at Psycho Nigeri, Randy, at Randy, 7 zeros and a 1, I should say, at Big Paws on a Pup.
At Smark to Death, our great friend Ant. We've got Charles Fitzpatrick. One day we'll find out your Twitter handle. One day. Nigel at Nacho Coalmine. Graham at MGB Wrestling Pod. We also thank Mason, who does that podcast with them. And, of course, Alex. Thank you all so very much. Gosh, your support means the world to us. And again, guys, if you want to become a Patreon, get a shout out, plus a ton of other cool bonuses, go to patreon.com/superkickingit to find out the different levels. I think there's a lot of good bonuses there. So please check it out, and your support would mean the world.
And we hope you enjoyed this episode. On the road from the Windy City, back in studio next week as...
our studio, apartment, as Colt Cabana would say.
Yeah, exactly. I was hoping you were going to jump in with that. But thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. That's it for us this week. That's the finish.